latest episode of Rich and Wibo present the Local Artist Show. Today's guest is an English major, corporate lawyer, investment banker, employee on the infamous Wall Street, antiques art dealer, voice actor, and actor of both stage and screen. What hasn't this guy done? Well, we're about to find out. Please welcome Connecticut's own Renaissance man, Mr. Jeff Savage, to Rich and Wibo present the Local Artist Show. How was that for an intro, Jeff?
Well, here I am.
Jeff, you're the man. Tonight's your night.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm pretty excited.
Yeah. No, I've known you for several years now, and your story is amazing. And that's why one of the things you did, we're going to talk about, is second act of Palace Theater, and you talk about your life, and you've done so many different things. That's why, corporate lawyer, investment banker, antiques dealer, voice actor, the list goes on and on. But before that, getting out of college, what was your first choice for a career, and what changed your mind?
Well, my first getting out of college, when I went into college, I was interested in maybe getting into medicine. But I know you and I have talked. I made the mistake, or it was probably a good thing, of taking biochemistry in my first year. And we got to the first exam or the first test, and I did so badly that the professor called me and he said, "You may want to think this through again." And I realized very quickly that wasn't going to be for me. So I became an English major.
Oh, wow.
That's a big switch.
Yeah, it is.
Yes, it is. But I was a lot more comfortable writing, papers and reading things and reporting on them than I was working with chemical formulas. So I switched to an English major, and it's during the time of being my college studying English, I began to think that I really enjoyed, writing and working with language. And I thought, well, what can I do that, I could always be an English teacher, but I thought, what else might be interesting? And I had a grandfather who was a very, very interesting man. And I admired him a lot. He was my maternal grandfather. And one of the things he'd always said to me was, he always talked to me about giving back.
Mm-hmm.
He was a child of Irish immigrants, and he and his wife, my grandmother, both grew up in Worcester, and they were immensely successful. And he always felt that there was an obligation that came with success, and that was to give back. And he always said to me, one of the ways you could do that would be to become a lawyer. And then he said, and then maybe ultimately, go into some sort of diplomatic service or government service or something which would be my way of giving back. That didn't happen, but.
Sounds like he had your whole life planned out for you.
Yeah, well, he was that kind of guy. But he ended up being one of the 5 men who ran the Marshall Plan after World War II.
Wow.
And chief chemist for DuPont, and and one of the inventors of Duco lacquer, and really quite a man. And he really believed, he was very grateful to this country for having given him the opportunity to do those things. And he felt very strongly about giving back, and that was his way of giving back. And of course, the Marshall Plan gave back to the world, not just to our country.
Yeah.
All right.
How did he become involved with that?
He was asked by, trying to remember who the then Secretary of State was. I don't think it was Cyrus Vance, but it was somebody like that.
Yeah.
Called him and said he had lost a son in World War II, and the Secretary of State said, well, we're doing this thing called the Marshall Plan, and Averell Harriman is going to run it, and we'd like you to be in charge of the redevelopment of the European chemical industry. And he said, well, I'm retired, and very happily so. all this, and whoever it was on the other end of the phone said to him, well, don't you lost a son in the war, isn't that correct? And he said, yes. And he said, well, don't you want his death to mean something? Well, yeah, that got him. How do you argue, as he said, how do you argue against that? So he said, I'm in. And it turned out to be one of the highlights of his life. And they lived he and my grandmother lived in Paris and for 5 or 6 years, I guess. And they worked on the Marshall Plan. Anyway, I admired him immensely.
Yeah.
So I felt as though I should give back, and maybe being a lawyer was one way to do it. And so I went to law school and took the New York bar exam and ended up working for one of the oldest law firms in the United States, a large law firm in New York City, doing corporate finance, the typical thing for somebody who wants to really make it. And it took me about 5 years. Well, it didn't take me that long. It took me about 5 years to leave that, but I realized pretty early on that was not what I wanted to do.
But you know what I like about you is that you're not afraid to try something new, something unknown. You just jump right into the next thing, from pre-med to English major to lawyer, because most people will just be, all right, I'm studying for this, I might as well just do it. And I know people that just live a life that they're not even really happy with. They're just going through the motions. So I have so much respect for you that you're like, yeah, let me try this, let me do that. But
some
how
people
did you
might call it ADHD?
I think I have a case of that too. But how did you, when you were in college, so you were what, say 19, 20, 21, you were an English major, and how far into that did you say, well, I want to go into law?
Oh, probably somewhere in the last 2 years, as a junior. I probably started thinking about it as a sophomore, and by the time I was a junior, partway into my junior year, I had pretty well decided that's what I wanted to try to do. And so, took the LSATs and did pretty well in them. And there I went to law school and got out and did my thing.
Did you ever want to be a defense attorney or a prosecutor, or was it always more in the corporate field?
I really set my sights on the corporate field, although I have to say that a trial lawyer wasn't really what I wanted to be, but I have thought, or had thoughts at the time, well, maybe if I had gone to a smaller city and become more of a general practitioner, I might have enjoyed it more. It doesn't matter all the reasons, but when you work for a large law firm which does a lot of corporate law, there's the pressure is really on you to produce billable hours.
Yeah.
And without going into anything more than that, I just felt, that's just not what I want to do. I want to do some things that are a little more creative, and I'm, and not that it's all, there isn't some creativity in that, there is, but I didn't get to do much. So I finally took a job as counsel to an industrialist in Atlanta, Georgia, named J.B. Fuqua, who was one of the early conglomerateurs. He had one of the really early conglomerates, which we all are used to now. But, in those days, that was a fairly novel idea. And he focused on the leisure time industries, of everything from movies to skis to snowmobiles to athletic equipment, all sorts of stuff, even a little real estate development.
So he would invest,
snapper lawnmowers.
Would he invest in that?
He would, he was a totally self-made man and a very interesting guy, but what he did is he set up a company and started to go in and buy these businesses But he would only buy them if the people who were running them and had made them successful would sign contracts to stay on beyond the time that they were acquired by Fuqua Industries. And his first big acquisition was a very large movie theater a company which owned a lot of movie theaters. I think it was actually the largest movie theater owners in the southeastern United States.
Wow.
And
What year was this?
It was called Martin Theaters, and I was in Atlanta, Georgia. They were based in Columbus, Georgia, but they owned theaters all throughout the Southeast. And he went on from there. But what I did when I was with him was to basically travel all around the place and around the world, really, and buy companies on his behalf, or make the arrangements. He would have identified them, but and in a few instances sell them off. And there was a fair amount of creativity to that, how you got that done and how you structured it. And I loved the fact that when it came down to writing the contracts, I could send them off to our lawyers in New York. I have to write the contracts myself.
My job is done. See you later.
Right, exactly. I'll look at the contract when you get it done. So that was a very enjoyable variation of what I had started out to do.
How many years did you do that?
I worked with him for about 6 or 7 years, and he had begun his career, his industrial career in Augusta, Georgia. And at his request, I moved to Augusta and got involved with helping. He again, giving back, that theme. He wanted to give back to the city of Augusta. And so they had a chance to attract a large Dutch chemical company, maker of nitrogen fertilizers, into Augusta, Georgia, to an industrial site on the Savannah River, which was the border between Georgia and South Carolina. And it would have meant a lot to a city the size of Augusta. So he said, these Dutchmen are, they're very smart and all that, but they have a very different relationship with the banks and the governments in Holland than we do here. So maybe would you be willing to go over and sort of help them work their way through that? And I did, and was there for about 4 years. And then, Augusta's a beautiful town, and it has the Masters and all that, and very nice. But it's still a very small southern town.
Yeah.
And I was married at the time to a woman who was originally from Hungary and had spent a part of her childhood in Switzerland and then in New York. And Augusta, Georgia was not the place that she would wanted to be on.
Not for her.
That's funny. So is that one of the reasons why you left?
Yeah, I ended up, I got a call from a recruiter who asked me if I would be interested in joining an old line bank in Philadelphia to help them run and they had an investment. It was a commercial bank, but they had an investment banking division. And since I had spent a good part of my career helping people buy and sell companies, investment banking was a natural thing to do. And so it was a chance to move up to the Northeast, or at least the Mid-Atlantic. And so I said yes and did that and enjoyed that very much. And
you were the owner of that bank?
No, I was an officer of the bank and ran the division of the bank that was involved in investment banking. And and then took an opportunity some years later to come up to Hartford to do the same thing with Connecticut National Bank, what was then Connecticut National Bank, which is now part of Shawmut and became part of Shawmut and et cetera. Now they've become a part of a very big banking, major banking operation. But I enjoyed that. I did pretty much the same thing there, except I actually started that group. The group in Philadelphia was in existence when I got there. When I came up to Hartford and settled in Avon, but I was brought in to set that up.
Your wife liked that better than Augusta? Avon?
Yeah, I did. I don't want to be torn, I guess. I didn't. I'm pretty,
Oh, no.
I can be pretty happy anywhere, but, and
Yeah,
I enjoyed Augusta, but yeah, it was more a natural place for me. I certainly in Philadelphia and then in Connecticut. And having gone to undergraduate school in Connecticut, it was an easy transition. So that's how I ended up here in Connecticut. And
Now, was this before or after you began working on Wall Street?
well, Wall Street, the bank, when I talk about Wall Street, the law firm which I joined right out of law school was located at 14 Wall Street.
Okay.
And it was right in the heart of the financial district. And it was an old, stodgy, what we would call white shoe law firm.
Yeah.
With they represented, for instance, the Episcopal Diocese of New York. But they also, they did many different things. They did everything from litigation to corporate finance to trusts and estates. You name it, they were involved in it. But it was on Wall Street and part of that whole financial group down in, now referred to, or even then referred to as Wall Street, which of course is larger than just Wall Street. And
I know that movie, The Wolf of Wall Street, is based on real people. Did you work around that time when they were busy doing their transactions?
well, it's interesting. I certainly knew some people like that. I don't know exactly who they were supposed to be, but those characters or who their characters were based upon. But we knew. One of the things that got me out of the whole financial world ultimately, including the legal end of it, and then the investment banking part of it. But one of the things that got me out of it was, you could see in that movie, what happened over time was, it used to be that when I first started working in New York in the financial area, a lot of what was done then, it all ended up in contracts. But prior to that, you would be negotiating and finally have an agreement, and you'd shake hands on it and you get the contract later on, and the contract pretty much said what you had agreed to.
Yeah.
Later on in the financial world, people such as these characters in the Wall Street movie became more and more influential, and you couldn't trust them. A lot of them, not all of them by any means, but they were, and it just became a different world working with these people. And it wasn't a world that I enjoyed as much. I liked the negotiating part. I liked putting the deals together. Didn't like writing the contracts, but I didn't have to do that. And I ended up, I don't mean, I hope this isn't boring to you.
No, I am intrigued by this because I'm a financial advisor and I am loving these stories. I'm not at the level that you are at, but to me, it's very interesting. And I'm sure my listeners will find the same thing.
Well, I hope so. I ended up after being involved with Connecticut National Bank and getting that group going, and we did quite well. But then they merged with Shawmut and then some other mergers, and they weren't particularly interested in the area of the business that we were in. So I had an opportunity to start my own small investment banking firm, backed by a then very successful and aggressive bank based in Bridgeport called interestingly enough City Trust Bank, but not
Hmm.
the big city bank that we know now. This was
Yeah.
and that was in the I guess the late 80s. And that bank was quite successful and they backed us fully, and we really were having a good time. And all of a sudden the big crisis in banking occurred, and you may have recall that somewhere in that period of time, banks started to fail. They hadn't been very careful about their lending
The bubble
guidelines.
burst.
Yeah, and all of a sudden, City Trust Bank in Bridgeport became one of the banks that failed, and our business had lost their financial support, and there wasn't much we could do about it. And I just said to myself at this point, I've had an interesting career doing all this stuff, but I'm tired of it, and I'm not happy, not having a good time. And at the same time, I had a divorce, and I just wasn't happy. And I said, "This is the heck with it. I'm getting a signal here that it's time to change focus." So I
Sometimes
moved.
you need that push.
Yeah,
Sometimes.
you do. Sometimes you need. Well, we all have had highs and lows in our careers and our lives, and at that point I thought, well, okay, I can do one of two things. I can sort of fold up my tent and go out into the sunset somewhere, or I can say this is a sign that you need to change, do something else with your life. And so I decided to try to do something else. I was living in Avon and moved to Litchfield, and people will say, "Why Litchfield?" Well, I don't know, because I thought it was pretty, and I knew I had some friends there, and had always enjoyed my time there, and so I said, "Okay, I'm going to go there." Wasn't sure what I was going to do.
At this time, were you able to have a pension or any kind of payment coming in that you could live comfortably while you look for another job? No.
No.
Okay.
No, because that's something I didn't go into, but between the divorce and I also had some personal obligations for the debt part of my investment bank, and I had to take care of I had a lot of financial setbacks, and so by the time I got to Litchfield, I really didn't have any financial wherewithal, and I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I did some consulting work for some companies and did some things that created some income, and then met the Tillou family, Tillou, who the father, Peter, was then internationally known as an antique and art dealer and dealt in very high-end old master paintings and major American paintings and European, you name it, European and American high-end furniture and all sorts of stuff. And he had a marvelous reputation, still does. And then his son, Jeffrey, who at that point was young in the business, but was beginning to build a wonderful reputation himself. And so I started to do some work for Peter, and then got to know Jeffrey well and ended up joining them in their business.
I really like that circle you hang out with. I never run into people like that.
Don't ask me why.
Like, oh yeah, look, I have an investment bank. We're going to open up a bank. I ran into an antiques dealer. I'm going to start doing that. You have a good set of friends.
Well,
Yes.
I don't know. They were nice to me.
Yeah.
And yeah, and that was a whole new world. I always liked our antiques and art.
Yeah.
And it was fascinating learning from the best
Yeah.
about them. And you can imagine, talk about meeting people. You can imagine the people you meet at that level of antiques and art. And I just found it to be highly interesting. And it was, and I did that. And while I was doing that and enjoying it, I got into acting. And that happened because I went to a college reunion, and there was a guy who I had seen on the green in Litchfield when I was working with the Toulouse in their gallery there. And I was pretty sure it was a fellow from my class in college, but I hadn't seen him in so long, I wasn't sure that it was he. And I ran into him at this reunion in New Haven, and I said, John, do you live in Litchfield? He said, no, I live in Goshen. And I said, well, I've seen you on the green in Litchfield, but I told him it wasn't, I hadn't seen him in so long, I wasn't sure, so I didn't say anything. And we had a nice long chat. And then he said, say, he said, I'm doing a Guys and Dolls at the Goshen Players. And as I remember from college, you can sing a little bit, and why don't you go out for it? And that was something I'd wanted to do most of my life.
Yeah.
As far as back as I can remember, I had an aunt who was in the theater, and she used to take me to shows. And my first show was Damn Yankees with Gwen Verdon and Ray Walston.
My favorite margin.
Yep. And I saw them, and I saw them go out and sing songs, and everybody applauded and stood. And I thought, boy, that's really cool. You just go out and sing a few songs and everybody thinks it's great. I was 10 years old.
Union glory.
And anyway, I did go audition for Guys and Dolls at Goshen and got a role, and that started this whole new aspect of my life.
Now, you mentioned your aunt. Was she involved in the play, or was she working on that play, or was she just
She
to watch
wasn't
it?
working on that play, but
Okay.
she had actually been a showgirl in the late 30s.
Oh, wow.
And she's a whole other interesting person. I think they could have based Auntie Mame on her. She was just a character. She was very tall for a woman, and especially in those days, she was 5'11".
Wow, that's
She
tall.
had a commanding voice, and personality. She was very friendly with a lot of people who I met as a kid, but it didn't mean much to me. I remember Donald O'Connor.
Singing in the rain.
Yeah, and Al Cap.
Oh, wow.
Cartoonist of Little Abner.
Yes.
He lived,
so you met all these people and had no idea who they were at the time, I'm sure, right?
I knew they were what they did, but at that age, But she loved theater, of course, and was involved, and so she took me to some shows. And she later on moved down to the Virgin Islands and made a lot of money in real estate, and came back up to New York and became a producer.
For movies?
For theater.
Wow.
And but she piqued my by taking me to these shows, she piqued my interest. And
that's a pretty good introduction to theater.
Yeah, and by the time I had never done anything about it until meeting my old friend John Barrett, and he got me involved, and Goshen Players, and then it just took off from there, and I have loved every minute of it.
But I've seen you, I don't know how many different shows at the Litchfield, or no, sorry, the Thompson Opera House and some other places. And you know what I like about you is that no matter what role you're playing, I can always tell you're having a great time. And that makes it more fun for me as an audience member to watch. I can just tell. It's like you could be the doctor and the miracle worker. I'm trying to think of some other plays I've seen you in, but you're up there having a great time, and you can tell you're enjoying yourself. And that makes, I think, the audience enjoy themselves even more. So.
Well, thank you, Rich. It's very kind of you to say that, and it's also true. I mean, I love doing it, and I think that what you said is absolutely right, that some of the most successful shows, they may not be the best shows, but they have a cast which really enjoys doing what they're doing and enjoys doing it with each other, and that transmits to the audience, and the audience gets a good feel and has a good time.
Yeah.
And that's what's so, yeah, that is incredibly important.
With just that one show alone that I'm thinking of, because I love Sybil Haggard. She's great.
Yeah,
Lana Peck. I mean, you had
Yep.
such a great, and the girl who played, what's her name? Not Annie Sullivan. She played,
oh, Bobby Daugherty was
she was
the actress.
phenomenal. From what I heard, so I was speaking with her father. I guess they made it that her father, they put him into play because he liked to be an actor as well, but bring her back and forth because she had a long way to travel. But he did a great job too. But she made it at her age. I think she was what, 9 or 10, third or fourth in a Broadway audition.
Oh yeah.
So she's definitely, I mean, she's off to a good start herself. But yeah, I love Broadway, and I used to. Unfortunately, I maxed out a couple of my credit cards going to New York once a month, but I still love the local theater. Connecticut has so many great places: the Repertory Theater, Seven Angels, Thompson Opera House, Goshen Players, the Repertory Theater in New Milford. I mean, there's so many great shows with people that, and sometimes I think it's better when there's actors that aren't known because it's more believable. If I see an actor that I know from the movies, I'm like, oh, I'm just watching, an example would be like, I'm just watching Tom Hanks do this. But when I see unknown actors, I'm saying, wow, I immerse myself into the story so much more because they're so much more believable to me because I don't know them.
I would agree with you. I think that I did Urinetown, the musical, out at Goshen some years ago.
Yeah.
And we were, after one of the shows, talking with some of the audience members, and it turned out that one of them was a well-known professional actress who I won't say her name because I think she'd rather not, but and I at first didn't recognize her, and then she introduced herself, and by then I figured out, oh yes, I said, I know. And she said, I have to tell you, she said, this production of Urinetown, I saw it in New York, and this was better.
Wow. That is a huge compliment.
Yeah. And I said to her, well, thank you. I find that hard to believe, but she said, no, it's true. And I had thought before then, and I've certainly thought a lot since then, the level of talent people in this part of Connecticut and New England, southern New England, and not just actors, but directors and music directors, musicians, lighting, set designers, and painters and builders and costumers, all of these people. It's just, it's amazing.
I don't see a lot. I mean, I'm sure there is everywhere you go, but I don't, in the productions that I've seen or even been a part of, I don't see a lot of egos involved. I see a lot of people just having fun, getting along. And again, I think that you see that on stage when everybody's having a great time doing that. But I've been involved in a couple of productions. I've seen you in several, and I go to plays all the time. I love speaking with people after the show. And I don't see a lot of egos in this area, which I love.
I think you're right. I mean, we all have egos, but we, part of being one of the great things about live theater. I mean, I love movies and voiceover work and everything, but live theater is something where you really bond.
Yeah.
The cast members really bond, and you really have each other's back. And when the odd time when someone has a big ego and doesn't really gel with the rest of the cast, it's thank God it doesn't happen very often. But when it does, it doesn't work. It interferes with the quality of the production. And there's so many times in live theater where someone, be it me or you or whoever, we all have it when we draw a blank on a line, or something weird happens, and all of a sudden one of the other actors just jumps in and gets you right back on track.
Love that.
And,
Yeah.
and that, yeah, and those are some of my favorite stories of theater when things like that have happened.
Mm.
And it really is important. And I think you're right, because being here where we're not all Broadway,
Yeah.
stars or whatever, there really isn't room for a big ego that interferes with the bonding and the chemistry of the cast.
Speaking of egos, if you want to talk about this, we can. I heard a story about Faye Dunaway. Or do you know what I'm talking about? Somebody, I guess she was fired because she didn't like what was going on. She slapped the other actor across the face, and they said, "I don't care who you are, you're off the show." I don't know if it was you or something, but I heard that story from one of the people that we worked together with. Okay, so it was somebody from Nutmeg Junction that they were telling me they saw that either they worked with her or they saw this happen, and the director said, "I really could care less who you are. I don't want people like you on my set." And
No,
yeah,
no, it just, and I have been in productions where people have been let go from the cast, but sometimes for other reasons, but occasionally because they've just become a detriment to the production as a result of ego or whatever, and it just and thank God when a director stands up and says, "Okay, that's it.
Mm.
We can't have that. This isn't working. It's not going to work this way."
did you ever see the movie The King of Comedy with Jerry Lewis and Robert De Niro?
I years and years ago.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, the reason I bring that up was because throughout the whole movie, Robert De Niro was being the biggest jerk to Jerry Lewis throughout the whole movie. Then at the end of the movie, he said, "Hey, it was great working with you." Jerry Lewis said, "Why were you being such a jerk?" He goes, "You know what? Your character was supposed to hate me. I wanted it to look real." So he was just being a complete jerk to him. Because Robert De Niro was like the ultimate method actor.
Yeah.
So he just throughout the whole movie, and I guess Scorsese I'm not sure if Scorsese was in on it, but he just let him do that. And Jerry Lewis was, and you could, if you watch the movie, I read that and then watched the movie again, and you could see he just hated him.
Oh God. Well, in the few times that I've been exposed to really well-known or established actors, I have
Yep.
been one of the movies I was involved in had quite a number of good actors and you're well-known, and they were a delight to work with, every one of them. And you begin to realize after a while that for the most part, these people are, they may be good at acting, and that's great, and they're well-known, but they're people.
Mm.
They
What
enjoy
movie was this?
Yeah.
What movie was this?
Chappaquiddick.
I remember definitely Bruce Dern. He played Joe Kennedy.
Right. Bruce Dern was in it, and Ed Helms and Jim Gaffigan. One of the greatest guys, and it was a guy named Clancy Brown, who's a well-known actor. His name isn't so well-known, but you'd recognize him immediately if you saw him.
Yeah.
And it's just some really good and well-known actors. Jason Clarke played Teddy Kennedy.
He did a great job.
Oh, he did a great job. And one of the things that amazed me is Jason Clarke is Australian.
Really?
And he had the best Boston accent.
Yeah.
He sounded more like Ted Kennedy than Ted Kennedy did.
Edra. That's funny. I love that movie, and I thought they did a great job telling that story. And you played one of the attorneys. How did that come about?
That was through a casting company called Boston Casting, oddly enough, based in Boston. And I've done some work for them in lesser known things, some commercials and other things. And they got in touch with me, and I was originally cast to play a specific Senator John Culver, who was a senator from Iowa and a football teammate of Teddy Kennedy's at Harvard, and a prominent part of Kennedy's career. And when I arrived on set, the producer said the big scene, my big scene was going to be at the Teddy's memorial service. He gave a wonderful speech about Ted Kennedy, and it really was the highlight of the ceremony, according to a lot of the people. And that was, I was quite excited about that. And when I got on set, the producer said, we've decided not to go that far. We don't want the movie to be too long, and it's going to go, if it goes all the way till the memorial service, it's going to stretch it out. So I was disappointed. And then they said, but we'd still like you to be in the movie. So I said, great, I'd love to do it. So I became, instead of Senator John Culver, I think I became lawyer number 3.
Well, to me, you were lawyer number 1.
Well, it was better than being number 4. You know?
Exactly. I never heard of that guy.
Right. Who was
Lawyer number 3.
Did you have to audition for that?
No, I really didn't. As it turns out, it was an odd thing. They got my headshot and resume and all that, and I actually, I could see it. I bore a physical resemblance to John Culver, and they saw that, and they were naive enough to take Boston Casting's word for it that I could do it. So I got a call from Boston Casting. They said, you got the role. And at that point, it was a more significant role, and I was really excited. And I enjoyed it completely. But the nice thing about it, again, is there wasn't an ego on that set. The director, John Curran, is a wonderful person, and his entire crew reflected that. He had great people working for him, and then casting the same way. And a lot of movie making is hurry up and wait.
Yes.
Spend a lot of time in what they call the crafty tent, which is the snack place and meal place and stuff, and you had to sit around with these people and say, that's Jim Gaffigan, and he's over there just being fairly quiet, as a lot of some, not all comedians are quiet.
I can't stand those ones that go on and on and on. I don't know. No. I've heard about some of them. I keep my distance. Oh, it drives me. I keep my distance from people like that.
But Jim Gaffigan was, we had this one scene on supposedly on the porch of the county compound up in Hyannis. We were actually in Beverly, Massachusetts, in a beautiful house there on the water. There was a scene where a number of us, Teddy Kennedy and Robert McNamara and Sergeant Shriver and a bunch of people, and I was one of them, were sitting around, and it was the morning that the accident on the Chappaquiddick Bridge came out in the New York Times. And we were reading the Times and chatting about it. And we had to do several takes because one actor or another went up on a line and just, or drew a blank, or the director wanted to change the way something was done or whatever. So we must have run it about 10 times before we got it. And Jim Gaffigan played the lawyer who was a retired district attorney and advisor to the family. And he was standing off on the porch, just leaning up against a pillar on the porch and looking out at the water. Didn't have a line in that scene at all. And finally, after about the 10th take, he turned and looked at us and he said, I don't know what's wrong with you guys. I haven't missed a word. Just little moments like that all throughout the shoot where you just realize these are good people. They don't take themselves too seriously.
Well, you know what I was impressed with when I first saw the movie? I knew Bruce Dern was in the movie, and because he plays Joe Kennedy after the stroke, I didn't even recognize him at first. And it took me a second. Oh, one of my favorite lines in that whole movie is alibi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a great actor.
You know what was very telling about that scene too is the first thing when Teddy finally got him on the phone, Joe, and the first thing to tell him what had happened, the first thing he said to Joe, and I think this was accurate because they were very careful about having all the facts in the movie be accurate. He said to his father, before he told him what had happened or anything, he said, "Dad, I'm not going to be president." And that was the most important thing for him to get across to his father. Very telling. And
He ended up being a really good. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just saying, then when he told him what had happened, that's when
Yeah.
Bruce Stern said the alibi.
I know it's so sad. It was he was all about making his kids, and when we can get into the whole Kennedy story saga with the mob and all that. But so when you were doing your role, did you do any research on the characters and on the history of the story? I'm sure you probably knew it anyway, but
I knew it, the story, but I did do research. We all did, just to be sure and especially when I thought I was going to play Culver, I did some research on him, and but the whole story, and I did remember it. A friend of mine had a house on Chappaquiddick, and not all that long after that all happened, I was up there, and I had been across the bridge, and all that stuff. So it was the scene was fresh in my mind, or at least vivid in my mind, of what that bridge was like. And they later built it up some and put side walls on the bridge, so that they learned their lesson, that somebody who presumably had too much to drink wasn't going to drive off it again.
How many movies have you been in altogether?
Not that many. I've done a number of small independent things that nobody would know about, and that's the only one of any note. And then probably another 4 or 5 where I've been either a more major character in a way less major movie, or a less major character, an extra or something.
Well, doing my research, there's one movie several that I wanted to see that I haven't seen yet. One, I don't know if it's called The Landlord or You Play the Landlord. It sounds like I think it's a horror movie.
That was done. You can probably find that somewhere on YouTube.
Really?
It never was a movie. I think it was intended to be hopefully on TV or something like that. I don't think it never made it, but it does exist somewhere in YouTube land.
Were they local filmmakers?
Yeah, fella from down near toward somewhere in the Meriden area. I don't remember exactly where. It was a lot of fun. Again, here you are, shooting in the director's house. And with a bunch of local people doing the technical, all the technical stuff and the acting and all of that, makeup and everything, and just sitting there thinking, these people are really talented. And they were. I mean, it wasn't a big surprise to any of us that the thing really never made it, but again, just being surrounded by very talented and very nice people. All in it together to try to make it work.
Now, did you reach out to them, or did they find you?
They found me somehow.
Come on.
I think somebody had seen a play that I'd done or something.
What's the name of that movie?
Sorry?
What was the name of that movie? Is it called Landlord?
Called The Landlord.
Okay. Yeah, because
I played an arrogant lawyer. Can you believe that?
Wow. I think you're being typecast.
That's what I said to them.
Not a lot of research put in that role, huh?
No, I just had a talk with a someone I'm sure you know, but a local actress, and we're going to be doing the Christmas show at Seven Angels.
Oh,
good.
wow.
And
My hometown.
and she plays, it's called, at least in the past years, it's been called Christmas at Earlene's Diner. and she plays Earlene. And I said to her, and she's a very funny, witty person. And I said to her something about, oh, what are you doing? She said, well, I'm busy rehearsing to be myself.
Oh, I definitely have to wait. I can't wait to see that. So it's Seven Angels Theater, and people who don't know, it's in Waterbury, Connecticut. Great place. Another great playhouse where they put on some excellent shows.
Yeah, they do good stuff there, and it's a good cast. A lot of people you will know.
I was gonna ask you because I wanted to get into that too, because you and I met working on a show called Nutmeg Junction, which is a radio show which pays homage to the old radio serials like Flash Gordon, Lone Ranger. I'm trying to think of all the different ones that they've had. And
Abner.
Yes. And I love that show.
Sherlock Holmes.
Yes. And we have to give a big shout out, like every time we start talking about this, Joseph Timothy Quirk, who is the writer, director, producer, sometimes actor. I mean, this guy does it all. I don't know how he does it.
He's everything. I don't know how he does it either. And he also is raising 2 children. And, you know, I ran into him, and he has 2 jobs, by the way. And
he works all day and then at night.
I ran into him at one
bless
of his jobs one day, and we were chatting away, and I said to him, just what you said. I said, I don't know how you do it. And he thought for a second or two, and then he looked me right in the eye and he said, you just have to really want it.
I love the attitude. And the best thing about him is I've never, ever seen him in a bad mood. I've never seen him tired. I always say, I don't think he sleeps. I think he just plugs himself in at night.
I think we've probably seen him tired, and we've probably seen him in a bad mood, but you couldn't tell.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah,
But yeah, so he put together that radio show, and then you and I are a part of it. And I have to say, 2 of my favorite characters are Fanny from Fanny and Fred, and Red is another character I love of yours. My favorite line, which is probably, I mean, because now he took off with the whole Barnaby Brothers other show, so he's been doing a lot more of that. But when we before COVID, we used to get together at the radio station. I had the best time, even if I had 1 or 2 lines. I didn't care. I just loved being around all the creative people, just laughing, having fun. It was great. I hope we get back to that.
You know, and it's an example of, you know, the chemistry of a cast, and how everybody just, you know, has everybody's back and wishes nothing but well for everyone else, and just wants to do the best they can. And that, I agree with you. I can't wait. I hope that it won't be too long before we're back in the studio.
I thought we were so close to getting back, and then the Delta variant came out, and so it started all over again. But I'm hoping, at least, I'm so glad that we have technology like this where we can keep doing it. Every once in a while, Joe will say, Rich, what are you doing Thursday night? I have a script for you. I'm like, I'll be there. So I'm glad that we're still able to do it. It's not as much fun, but it's at least we're still there. Are you doing the live show? He's doing it right now. We're recording in September, and I guess next month in October they're going to do a live show. I can't make it, but
we're going to do a live show at the Litchfield Community Center. Yes, I am.
Oh, good. And what day is that for my viewers, so they can remember?
I want to say, if people want to know, they can look it up on the Litchfield Community Center website. Let me just see if I can find it here. I want to say something like the 24th, but I'm not certain of that, but it's somewhere in that range. And we're actually doing we're also involved, some of the people that you know, our friend John Fabiani, who's also part of Nutmeg Junction, a very good character actor, has put together a thing called the Letters Project. And on, I think it's the 21st, and don't hold me to these dates, but we're going to do the Letters Project live at the community center. And John has been a collector of letters for years, going back to, I think he told me he was 12 years old or something when he came across a book called The Book of Insults in a library. It was a lot of letters, insulting letters, one of which I read in every one of them.
Oh, I have to see this.
It's a letter written by Pete Muggins, who's from Southwest Louisiana. And he writes it to Abe Lincoln right after Abe Lincoln has been elected. And you can imagine how happy he is about Abe Lincoln's election. And it's just one swear word after another, just a string, and how much he, what a idiot, incompetent jerk Lincoln is, and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But John has come across a journal from the White Star Lines in, I think, 1856 on a trip from Liverpool to Melbourne, Australia. 3.5 months it took in those days. And these people are probably going over there because there was a gold rush in Australia at the time. And they have a ship's journal, which comes out once a week, which tells all about what's going on the trip and who's doing what. And, there are all sorts of things, birthdays and births and deaths, and God, I think even a wedding or whatever, and very interesting stuff. So we're going to be, a group of actors are going to be reading excerpts from this journal. And that's, I want to say, around the 21st at the Litchfield Community Center. And then we'll be doing the live Nutmeg Junction, something like the 24th. I wish I could live.
Yeah, like you said, people can check out the Litchfield newspaper and they'll have all that. But I definitely want to check out, I won't be able to make Nutmeg Junction, but the letters sounds great. I have my girlfriend has a little bit of a connection to Abraham Lincoln. Her great grandfather was Abraham Lincoln's first vice president, Hannibal Hamlin.
Ah, yeah.
Yep. And then I guess from what I heard, what she found out through the family tree, is that he really did not like being vice president at all. He loved being, I think, more of a senator in Maine. I think it was a senator, but he did not like that at all. And I guess from what I heard, he got Andrew Johnson because he wanted more of the Southern vote.
Well, in the Pete Muggins letter, he doesn't leave the vice president out of his insults. He refers,
I gotta see this.
He refers to him as well.
I'm getting you front row for this one.
I think you'd enjoy it, and you'll know quite a few of the readers. And I'm not able to come up with the dates right now, but
we can look it up.
There's a website and a Facebook page for Litchfield Community Center, and that will at some point have the dates and times.
You know what, you mentioned several times about how I'm going to know these people. I love the fact when I first started off doing Nutmeg Junction, even now, I met all these great creative people, and then without even realizing, most of the time I'll go to see a play just because I'm interested in the show. Like, oh, I know that person.
That's right.
I remember one of my friends my friend's daughter was in the Miracle Working a Couple one. She goes, do you know everybody that's in plays? I said, no, it just seems that way, because every time I go to one of the local productions, I see, and that's why I love how Joe is sort of the center of all the creativity. I mean, he's a creative genius himself, but I mean, he has all these people and he gives them parts, puts them in different things, and it just keeps everybody together, and we're all having a great time. So it just goes all back to that. It's like creative people.
He dazzles me, Rich. When I think that, for instance, these Sherlock Holmes and Barnaby Druthers things that he writes, they're period pieces, and they take place all over, much of it in England, but also in the United States and different cities, and he writes and works into each of these scripts, facts and things that are going on in that period, and in London and in Seattle and wherever we are. And I don't know how he does it. So it's not just sitting down and writing it, but he obviously does some research.
Oh yeah, which I don't know when he finds the time again.
I don't either.
Yeah. But actually, I interviewed the cast of Barnaby Druthers, and I was talking to Humphrey, and I said, did you ever think Jeff Savage would make you a superstar? He just started laughing. I know you're the one that brought him into the Nutmeg Junction world.
Yes.
And he is loving it. I asked him, I said, what do you plan? What's your plan in the next 5 years? He goes, just doing what I'm doing now. I love this. I'd never want it to end.
Yeah, he's very happy, and he's very good at what he does.
Yes.
And that's the point, as you say, every one of these people who gets involved with Nutmeg Junction, they're very good.
Yeah.
And excellent. And boy, the coverage of Nutmeg Junction is expanded around the world now.
Yeah, we're,
Ireland, and New
I think
Zealand.
I forget how many states we're in, but we're also in Ireland and New Zealand now.
Right.
So we are a worldwide phenomenon. And you know what I
And
love? The first, sorry to interrupt you, I was gonna say the first meeting we had, he had a plan, and he's actually gone beyond that plan. He goes, 6 months I want to be here, 12 months I want to be here, 18 months I want to be here. And basically he's gotten to the point where he says, I want to be on the Tonight Show or whatever show it was, where we're all talking about how we've been doing this. And I mean, I don't know how he's getting the shows. I mean, he's contacting radio stations all over the world, and they're saying, yeah, let's have it, because it's a quality product.
I think it is. I mean, it's hard for us to tell when we're doing it,
I know.
but apparently other people enjoy it.
Yeah.
I don't know what's wrong with them, but they do.
Well, I actually had a chance to act with you in, it's called the 48-hour film project. I
Yes.
love that. And for people who don't
Wasn't that
know,
fun?
oh, it's great. The first one we did was so much fun because it was in person, it was pre-COVID. I got to play the humble troubadour. You got to play grandpa.
Right.
And it was called The Company You Keep. And people who don't know, the 48-hour film project is 48 hours, you get, I think, a scenario. And you have to use a certain amount of phrases, certain amount of words, and you have to incorporate everything into a story. You have to write it, direct it, produce it, get it acted, then edit it, all within 48 hours.
Yeah. And I think there's even a prop, at least one prop that you have to use, and one line they give you that you have to work with it somehow. And isn't it odd that I was the grandfather?
No, once again, you're being typecast.
I do some commercials too, and I find out that they want me to play the longest running commercial I did was for a home aid, a company that provides home aid. And I arrived home from the hospital with a walker, and this home aid met me, and we're having a wonderful time making meals in the kitchen and everything. You forget that I guess I'm not going to play the lead in West Side Story.
You know what, though? It's funny because you have, well, the first time I saw that commercial, I do a public access show with some of the cast members of Nutmeg Junction. And one of the actors said, hey, there's Chef Savage. And I said, wait, what do you mean? I was watching the TV. I didn't even recognize you. And but you watching your second act at the Palace Theater, you have a funny story regarding that commercial. What was that? It was your girlfriend. I guess her friends were asking you. Yeah, that's hilarious.
Right. It's happened more than once, but we've had this commercial. It ran for 3.5 or 4 years. It may still be running. People tell me they still see it. I haven't seen it in a long time, but anyway, I have a walker and I get out of the car and I look all pitiful. And and a couple of people have come up to her and said, I didn't know Jeff was sick. Is he all right? and she just turns to them and says, that's called acting.
Wow. You really get into the part. I love that.
Oh God. Well, they gave me the walker and it was way too short, and that turned out to be a good thing because I ended up having to hunch over to use it.
How did you get, do you have an agent that gets you these roles, or do you just go down there by yourself, or if somebody sees you in a play and says, I think you would be good for this?
I have an agent for commercials, although that particular commercial just came through a guy that with whom I had actually done a show.
Yeah.
And when they were casting that commercial, he needed an old guy, so they got me. But I have an agent in New York for commercials, and other than that, it's mostly, in fact, now mostly what I do is just from people that I know in the business, or occasionally somebody sees a show and says would you be interested in whatever? And you just
you're not actively seeking work, but the work comes to you for the most part.
Occasionally, a little bit of both, but mostly when you've done this for a while and you've been in so many things as I have, you get exposure. And what doesn't happen is that people don't come up and say, boy, you really suck. I don't want to use you in anything.
So that's always good.
So far, that hasn't happened. So the only thing, blessedly, the only thing I'm aware of are the people who seem to think that they liked what you did. So,
Who were some of your favorite actors growing up, and who are some of your current favorites?
oh gosh, I mean, growing up, I liked people like Roy Rogers and
Yes.
yeah, yeah, people of that type. Um, I guess I always enjoyed Cary Grant. He was one of my real favorite actors.
He made a
And
lot of great movies.
yeah, people like Katharine Hepburn, they're all. I was pretty young, but they were the most prominent, and I always thought that they were terrific. I remember Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers. I
Yes.
always loved their musicals. Now it's gotten to the point where, you know what? I will watch the Oscars or the Emmys or something, and I have to tell you, I don't know who half the people
No.
are.
You are not alone. I don't know any of the current act for the most part. I think right now, for me, the best current actors are Kate Blanchett and Christian Bale. I think when I see them, she's another one, Kate Blanchett. I think she's from Australia. She has been in so many movies with so many different
Yep.
dialects that until I heard her in an interview, I wasn't sure if that was her real voice. So,
Yeah.
and Val Kilmer's the same way. Like the last movie I think I saw him in was where he played Dick Cheney, and
Yeah,
he was unrecognizable.
He was terrific. I think, of course, Meryl Streep, you can't.
Yes.
She's just amazing. As they say, she's a chameleon. I mean, she just completely becomes every role that she takes. And I think still of the older actors, Sam Waterston is.
Yes. Law and
People of
Order.
that ilk are great. And I have to say, a lot of the real younger actors and actresses are, especially now, because a lot of this stuff is streamed and it's on HBO and Netflix and Apple TV and who knows what. And I don't know really don't know who a lot of these people are.
It's funny because even with music and radio and even movies, I love watching the older stuff. And most recently, one of my favorite shows that I'm watching is a show called Murder in the Building, starring Steve Martin and Martin Short. And it's hilarious. It's written by Steve Martin. And it's such a great. It's a dark comedy making fun of all the shows like Law and Order and things like that. And CSI. But I've been watching a lot of that and some of the older stuff. And as you said, I go watch the Emmys or the Oscars. I said, who is this? What else have they been in?
Right.
And if it wasn't for Google, I would have no idea what they did.
I saw those two interviewed by Colbert on his late night show. And the chemistry between them is just unbelievably good, and they are individually just hilarious, and together even more so, I think.
Well, you could tell they play off of each other. So they've been friends for so long. They know each other so well. They play off each other. And you could tell, again, I keep going back to this, they like each other and they're having fun. And that's when I'm watching the show that you could just tell that they're not too, because sometimes you could tell, like in a movie, like, these people probably hate each other. And they, as soon as like an example would be, which I couldn't tell until I read the biography on it, was Abbott and Costello. They hate each other with a passion. As soon as they get off stage, they're like, he went one side of the stage, because I guess Bud Abbott was an alcoholic, and Lou Costello really didn't like that, and there was just a lot of animosity. But with those two, you could just tell that they're just loving it every episode they do.
That's for sure. So anyway, there are a lot of people now. I mean, as I've said, a lot of what's done now is done on other, streaming and all of the stuff and there's so much of it. I don't know how people keep up with, a tenth of it, much less half of it.
I don't care how easily access it is on TV going downstairs. Sometimes I like that. I still prefer going to a theater, my popcorn and my soda, sitting in front of the big screen with the sound system. I will never stop going to the movies. There's movies now, they're starting to stream HBO Max simultaneously with the theater, and I will see the movie in the theater, even though I could watch it for free. I just love that experience.
I feel the same way.
And that's why there was, I think it was last year or 2 years ago, there was a movie that was on Netflix that was up for an Oscar, and Steven Spielberg said it perfectly. He goes, "That's a made-for-TV movie." And he goes, "I'm not being a snob, but have movies that were in the theaters win the Oscars. Let that win an Emmy or something." And I agree with him.
The one problem I have with theaters now is that exaggerated Dolby sound system.
Oh God, yeah.
My God, I can't remember what movie it was, but just pre-COVID, the last movie I saw.
Yeah.
I went with my granddaughters. It was some, I think it was the new Mary Poppins movie or something. And oh my God, I thought I'd never hear again when I left that theater.
Oh yeah, there's times where my chair was actually shaking. It was so
Yeah.
loud.
Yeah.
So,
From the frenetic mind of author Rich Sear. 5 terrifying short stories, now available in one collection. Confessions of a Frenetic Mind. 5 tales of blood-curdling terror, available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble.
now you were drinking for a little while, and did that affect you at all at one point in your life?
Yeah, I came from a family which on both sides was almost all alcoholics in the generation ahead of me, and including at least one of my parents and possibly both. And and I always said, well, I'm not going to be like that. And lo and behold, I got into my I guess 40s or so, and I found myself being just like, not just like that, but very similar.
Yeah.
And so over 25 years ago now, I guess 26, things weren't really going well in my life, and I just decided that I ought to stop. And thank God I was able to. And
You did a cold turkey then. You didn't even have to go to
well, I didn't go to rehab. I went to AA, which was immensely helpful. I think, I mean, who knows? I was addicted, that's for sure. It may have been emotionally and not necessarily physically, because I didn't have a lot of the physical repercussions that some people do after they stop drinking. But I was definitely addicted, and I think I mentioned to you that I actually have, I have 4 children, but the oldest is a daughter, but then the next 3 are all boys, and the older of my 3 boys preceded me in getting sober by 5 years. And I'm one of the, when I don't do it much now or at all really, but for a number of years I used to speak at AA meetings or rehab facilities, and I would say, I'm one of the few people who can honestly say that my power of example is my son.
That's very inspiring and very impressive. And the two of you have just kicked it just like that together. I think it was probably good that you both supported each other too at the same time.
Well, we did, but and I now have another of my children who I think has just had her 10th anniversary,
Congratulations.
Yeah, and
yeah.
I have another son who just stopped drinking because he just felt better, and another one who drinks but moderately, and we'll see. But I think it's the best decision I ever made in my life, and I can't recommend enough to anyone who thinks they have a problem with drugs or alcohol to try to pull it together and go find a group of people, be it a formal group or not, who can support you in getting sober.
Yeah, no, I think that's the biggest thing. Let people knowing that they're not alone. There's other people out there like them, and they can call and have the support. Because I saw my father's family go through that. My father was the only one out of 8 kids that was not an alcoholic, and I saw the rest of all his brothers and sisters. I mean, he's the only one that's alive. He's the youngest, and he just, I mean, a lot of them died from from smoking, cancer, alcoholism. It was just, they were not the healthiest of people, and they just did not. And it was sad because the rest of the family resented my father because he was the only successful one. So it really get along with that side of the family. But I think me seeing that personally, just I have no interest in going down that road. And I never, I mean,
Nope.
I'll have a drink
Not good.
every once in a while, but never to the point where I need one. I think that's why Wibo was gone for about a half hour. I think he got a couple drinks.
I just saw him shaking his head when I thought he was agreeing with you.
Yeah, the Wi-Fi took off for a minute. I don't know what happened. That Wi-Fi, boy. Hey. It's
Well,
bad.
anyway, it's something that I am just immensely happy that I was able to do, and I thank God that I was able, that it worked.
I think people they want, not only want to, but they have to want to be able to quit, because a lot of people I know, like, oh, I should quit, but then they make up an excuse. You know what? I'll start tomorrow. You know what? Christmas is coming up. I'll start after Christmas. You just have to have that, say, you know what? No more excuses. I'm going to do it now. So I love the fact that you had that discipline, and you just said, I don't want this anymore.
I don't know if it's discipline, but the second part is true. I don't want it anymore, and I don't want to go through that. And the other people I know who have become sober, they feel the same way. I just don't want to live my life that way. And thank God. And some people never are able to stop, and it leads to all sorts of horrible things in their lives, including death.
Yeah.
And, it's an awful thing. So,
Definitely say we're very happy that the acting world is very happy, and the rest of it is very happy that you quit that and you're out there and entertaining the masses. Yep.
Did you miss me?
Yes, we did.
I know.
Oh, man.
It wasn't the same without you, Eva.
Yeah. Because I didn't meet you that drugs and alcohol. I had drugs and alcohol in my family. It's not good.
Yeah, no,
Not good. And I was blessed. I didn't do all that stuff.
Yeah. I actually, just a quick story, but I actually was involved in a play, and I won't say which one it was, but it was at the Warner Theater. And the opening of the second act was supposed to began with 2 characters on stage, and they happen in real life to be man and wife, and they were playing man and wife, and curtain went up, and the woman was out there, and the man wasn't there, and nobody knew where he was. And turns out that somebody went and got him out of the bar at backstage, which was then a bar next door to the Warner. And and he almost missed that. I mean, he did miss the beginning of the second act. And things like that, you just, and I'm not making a judgment to say that this person is an alcoholic, but you need to put all that stuff in perspective, and hopefully, prayerfully, if you need to stop it, you're able to do it with the help of others.
Now, were you still drinking when you were acting?
No.
Okay, the reason I asked, because when I did comedy for a while, and a lot of comedians could only do it. They had the liquid courage. They could only get on stage if they had a couple of drinks. I'm just the opposite. I need to be completely sober, completely clear, because I don't want my mind, my brain clouded, which is pretty much all the time. So, but you know what I mean? I'm on stage and I'm not going to be 100%. So after I get off stage, maybe I'll go out for a drink or two. But before that, but I know so many people that can only do that if they had a couple of drinks, and I just wouldn't be able to function like that. So that's why I asked you if you did that, how were you able to? Because I don't know how people can get on stage and remember their lines.
It's hard enough to memorize lines when you're
Exactly. That's the point I was going to bring up, because I don't know how they could do that. I need to be 100% in the moment instead of just, I would just sit there blankly.
I had a Broadway actress tell me once, I had done at the Warner, actually, I had done it, Death of a Salesman, and played Willie Loman, who has, I mean, I don't know how many lines, I never counted them, but many hundreds of lines. And she told me that in one of the plays that she had done on Broadway, the male lead, who had tons of lines, was drunk almost every show. And my attitude was, how the hell did he do that?
No.
And he has since, by the way, stopped, gotten himself sober. But
speaking of remembering lines, do you have a secret to that, or does it come naturally to you, or if you've been on stage? I know you talked about it earlier, where when you're live and you have somebody say, "Hey Jeff, weren't you going to call somebody?" You're like, "Oh, and then that will restart your memory." Do you say, especially Willie Loman, you were the main character? How long did it take you to memorize all these lines?
It took a long time, and for me, no, it has not necessarily just come naturally by any means. And I think any actor who tells you that they don't have any trouble memorizing lines is probably not telling you the truth.
Yeah.
But it just took hours and hours of work to do that. And then I don't really find that I really feel as though I've memorized my part of the script until I've done it on stage, till we've actually run the show a number of times and I'm doing it on stage, because my way of memorizing is visual.
Yeah.
And what I'm saying has everything to do with where I am on stage, with whom I'm on stage, and, just envisioning everything, and the lines come with that, with those things, who's on stage and where am I? And given the fact that you at least can remember what show you're in or what the storyline is.
Do you like to improv at all?
Occasionally, not often, but especially when you're, it becomes important when somebody else goes up on a line and you want to help them get back on track. But I've had certainly plenty of people who've done that for me, and I hope I've happily been able to do that occasionally for some other people.
Funny, because I love the old Universal horror movies, and I interviewed Victoria Price.
Excuse me.
And we were talking about how Vincent Price, her father, worked with Boris Karloff, and I can't remember the other actor's name. He worked with Bela Lugosi. There's another actor, but one of them loved to improvise. Boris Karloff hated improvisation. He was more, I want to go by the script. That's all I'm doing. And then Vincent Price was more the conduit. It's like, I could go either way. But yeah, he said that the other actor would just throw them off so badly, and he didn't know what to do. He goes, he would always complain to the director, this is not what's in the script. I want this. And so they came to a compromise because Boris Karloff was so mad. So Boris did a little bit of improv, but then the other guy stuck to the script a little bit more.
Yeah.
Because that's why, from what I heard, a lot of people who worked with Rob Williams was the same way. Like, I don't know what to do, because he'd be all over the place. That
happened a lot on the Carol Burnett show.
You know what? But that's what makes the show so funny. The funniest was always Tim Conway trying to make, or Harvey Korman trying not to laugh at Tim Conway. Yes. That was always what made the show for me watching.
Dentist scene.
Yes.
The Novocaine. Oh my God. And
yeah, that's the scene I was actually thinking of. Yeah. They don't have shows like that anymore. I love the old variety shows.
Me too.
It's just unfortunately, I wish they did. and they were able to showcase more of these actors.
Well, Rich, I just took a look at my watch, and as much as I'm enjoying this, I realize we've been blathering on for almost 2 hours here.
Okay. Well, you know what? I was going to ask you, do you have time for one more question?
Sure.
All right. What is your connection with Yankee great Yogi Berra?
Well, I don't have a direct connection in the sense that other than the fact that I idolized him when I was a kid. And in Little League, I was a catcher, and on up into my junior year in high school, I was a catcher, or sophomore year, I guess. But he lived for 46 years in a house in Montclair, New Jersey. And about 6 years or so ago, that house, it was just before he died, a short period before he died. And that house was sold because he was moving into some sort of a senior or nursing facility, I'm not sure which. And the purchaser of his house was my middle son. And so my son and his wife and 2 daughters now happily live in that house. So that's as close a connection as I can come up with.
All right. So very last question. I lied. That was the second to last one. What's next, and where can people find you?
Well, the next thing I mentioned earlier will be the Christmas show at Seven Angels. I guess it'll still be called Christmas at Erling Steiner. I don't even know. We haven't started rehearsal yet.
Okay.
But that'll be in November, late November, into right up to Christmas time. And other than that, I don't know. I don't really have any other commitments. I'll do some Nutmeg Junction things, and who knows? I'm auditioning for some commercials, and we'll see. But
all right.
We're just trying to get back into the swing of things here.
I hope you're able to throw away that walker and get on with your life. Jeff, it was a pleasure having you on the show. You have lived an interesting life, to say the least.
Well,
thank you very much.
Thanks, Jeff.
And Wibo, thank you. It's nice to see you. Rich, thank you very much. It's always a pleasure.
Take a bow.
That
That wraps up the latest episode of Rich and Wibo Present the Local Artist Show. A huge thanks goes out to the multi-talented, the extremely humble, and one of the nicest guys I ever had the chance to work with, Mr. Jeff Savage. I would also like to thank you, the viewer, for tuning in. Enjoy your day, everyone.